I've changed so much. My wife is even going to recognize me whenever it is I get back to her. And how I'll ever be able to tell her about days like today. Ryan, I don't know anything about Ryan. I don't care. Man means nothing to me. It's just a name. But if, you know, if going to Ramel and finding him so he can go home, if that earns me the right to get back to my wife, well, then that's my mission.
Steven Spielberg, luckily now, is being given the respect that he deserves as a filmmaker who wants to tell the story that he's set out to tell. And no matter how gruesome, no matter how terrifying, no matter how fantastic or magical it should be, it will be as honest as he can create it. And I think that's what makes him extraordinary, is that he does it each time in a completely different genre.
His ability to focus and his on the set and get what he wants really has, everything else falls to the wayside. The only thing he knows is the sun is going down and he doesn't have the shots that he needs, and you have to keep up with him.
Steven Spielberg once was quoted as saying, "I feel I'm all over my movies. I know all my movies are all over me." The cinematic mind of Steven Spielberg has created some of cinema's most entertaining and memorable films, from Jaws to Saving Private Ryan. As a filmmaker, Spielberg has directed, produced, or executive produced 7 of the 20 top-grossing films of all time, including Jurassic Park and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Worldwide, his films have grossed more than any other filmmaker before him, and at the rate his career continues, that record will most likely hold for many years to come. Born on December 18, 1946, in Cincinnati, Ohio, Spielberg was raised in the suburbs of Haddonfield, New Jersey, and Scottsdale, Arizona. He started making amateur films while still in his teens. His desire to tell stories, as he will readily tell you, began very early in life.
I love ghost stories. I've always loved them. And I used to frighten my sisters with them. I used to frighten myself with them. And I just like telling ghost stories. And it's fun around the campfire when it's, you know, the only light is the lights on your faces. And if you take a few steps back, it's pitch black. Without a flashlight, you can't see your way back to your tent. And it was always fun thinking I'd tell a really scary story. And everybody will be so scared going back to the tents. And I wound up not frightening them as much as I frightened myself. I keep myself up awake. I turn my flashlight on. I just have a night light until the batteries went to yellow and then disappeared, you know, and I'd have no light at all. I would always wind up frightening myself more than other people. The very earliest memory that I recall that associates itself to filmmaking was this urgent need to not be punished by my parents for wrecking my Lionel train set. They would break sometimes, and my dad got frustrated one day, and he said to me, "If I have to take one of these trains one more time back to the Lionel shop to get repaired, I'm taking the entire train set away from you. That's the end." And I remember trying to figure out, well, how can I, like, have this thrill of the great train wreck and not be deprived of my train? So I borrowed his little 8mm movie camera, and I actually filmed the train wreck. And all the cuts, which I didn't really understand what I was doing, but it was sort of intuitively, I knew that if one train went left to right, and the second train and another cut went right to left, and they both met in the middle with the third cut, it's pretty much what I used to do when I used to stick my eye down within an inch above the tracks to get the perspective of the trains going by when I was playing with my train set. And I did that on film. It didn't wreck the trains too bad, but I was able to run the film over and over again, and I really believe that was the first time I realized the power of film, you know, to be able to get away with something and not get punished for it.
His grips, his DP, his costumers, everybody is doing their own passion. And so I think you just sort of like, if I can use this analogy, come under the umbrella of his, because the collaborative effort of making film is pretty much personified by Steven Spielberg.
In 1969, Spielberg's 22-minute short film, Amblin, was shown at the Atlanta Film Festival. which led to his becoming the youngest director ever to be signed to a long-term deal with a major Hollywood studio. It was at Universal Studios that Spielberg began to learn his craft under the watchful eye of Universal executive Sid Sheinberg. Up until that time, and prior to Amblin, Spielberg had made a number of amateur films that included The Last Gun, Escape to Nowhere, and Firelight, which received a public screening and actually earned its meager production cost back. Spielberg began his professional career at Universal with an episode of the television series Rod Serling's Night Gallery in 1969. The episode starred screen legend Joan Crawford.
I later found out that she was offended that George Seaton or Henry Hathaway or one of these, great veteran directors had not been, hired to direct her. But she hid that from me, and I think that it taught me a great lesson that all those actors and actresses that came out of the 1930s and 40s were so professionally raised and trained. The habits were so professional that she had to look upon me as her director, not as some kid out of a Sid Sheinberg White Elephant sale, which is what I often felt that I was, because Sid gave me my break and assigned me to direct Joan Crawford when I was a kid. And she was great, but it was later in the show that it became just a mess. The show kind of got away from me. I had never worked with a professional crew before. I became 2-3 days over schedule. The producer, Bill Sackheim, showed up on the set, began making changes over my shoulder, and it didn't end well. But she was always great, and she was always, highly respectful of the office of director, if not the director himself.
4 years after joining Universal Studios, Spielberg directed the suspenseful telefilm, Duel, starring Dennis Weaver. He had seen a short story in Playboy magazine upon which Duel was based, and learned that it was soon to become an ABC Movie of the Week. He pursued the project vigorously, and was given the assignment to direct. But Duel would not prove to be an easy task, since Spielberg was only given a 14-day shooting schedule.
One of the things I did was, instead of doing storyboards, I basically had a roadmap of the entire screenplay. And this roadmap was simply to acquaint me in intimate detail with all the twists and turns of the story, and all the events that Richard Matheson had put in his teleplay. I know I use 5-6 cameras sometimes, not just on the crash at the end of the story with the truck going into the ravine, but 5-6 cameras just simply, because in 14 days there was no time to really shoot a movie. And those 6 cameras were like a relay race. I would just put the cameras on different sides of the road and have the truck and the car pass those cameras, and then I was able to rob Peter to pay Paul. And it was amazing how it all came together, because I had 6 film editors working on it, because I had an air date of 3 weeks after the last shot. It was supposed to be on ABC 3 weeks hence. It was crazy. So 6 editors were hired, and I was literally running from editing room to editing room, supervising the edit of my little film. And I've never worked as hard. I've never worked as fast. And yet, for some strange reasons, I miss, looking back, never having worked as fast or as hard on anything else except for Duel.
Spielberg directed 7 more television movies for Universal before seeing a newspaper article with the title Modern Day Bonnie and Clyde, the story of a Texas couple on the run from the law. Together with friends Hal Barwood and Matthew Robbins, he created a screenplay that eventually became the 1974 film Sugarland Express. It would be Spielberg's feature film debut as a director, but only after promising the executives at Universal that he would cast at least one name actor in the film.
And then I took it to Sid Sheinberg, and Sid said, well, look, I'm in charge of TV. You need to take this to Jennings Lang, who was in charge of movies at the time. So I brought it to Jennings, who I didn't know very well. And he read the script and liked it. But he said to me, look, I can't give you the shot at directing this movie unless you put a movie star. And it's your choice. You've got 3 characters in the police car, and any one of them needs to be a movie star. So you go out and either find Lou Jean or the cop or the husband. And if you score a movie star, we'll make the picture with you. Kid, he added that at the end of it. And then Dick Sanick and David Brown, who came onto the project to help me get it made, because I wasn't making any headway. They kind of liked the script, and they came on, and they took over the producing of it. And they suggested Goldie Hawn. I went to her house one day and met with her. She loved the character, Eugene Poplin, had a lot of great ideas about it, had some changes she wanted me to make, which we did. And then she said yes, and no sooner than Goldie said yes did we have a start date. It was just amazing.
What they're saying is Eleanor.
You broke out a pre-release?
Oh, shut up, mind your own business.
You broke your husband out of pre-release?
Well, you're assuming an awful lot for a man your size.
Who's that, unemployed beautician? You've been taking money from Donna Hyde?
No, I quit.
You got $65, you ain't never seen work. What you been doing 3 weeks? You been running around?
I have not.
You're lying.
I am not lying.
Don't lie to me!
Don't you call me no liar. Donnie Hyde and Bill Sales ain't running around. That's just beering.
I wanted to be successful. And everybody said, you know, with an ending like that, it's not going to be successful, where the husband gets killed and the cop gets away and the wife is destitute and going back to jail and she never gets her child, and how are you going to make any money on this? I guess about 4 months before the film was about to be released, I had this tremendous change of mind. I said, you know, I want to hit. I really want to hit. Maybe all these studio pundits are right. And I went to Dick and David and I said, let's change the ending. They get across the Rio Grande. They get to Mexico. They get away. She gets her baby back. It's a happy ending. And Dick and David said, look, we're artists. We want this movie to end the way your great script ended, you know. It's got to end that way. And they kind of, you know, reminded me that, you know, that I shouldn't cop out and sell out. And I always loved them for that, you know, for sort of my last, and in my moment of weakness, they kind of, you know, put some backbone into me again.
With the 1975 release of Jaws, Spielberg's life would never be the same again. He was off and running as one of Hollywood's premier and most bankable film directors. The film starred Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss, and became the first movie to break the $100 million mark and gained for Spielberg a Golden Globe nomination for his direction. But the film was not without its problems, and stories are legendary about production delays and heavy cost overruns due to an uncooperative mechanical shark.
I was meeting on the cut of Sugarland with Dick Zanuck and David Brown, and I noticed this pile of papers in their secretary's office, and it said Jaws on the cover. It turned out to be galleys from the as yet unpublished novel by Peter Benchley. And I remember asking if I could read it, and Dick and David said, well, you can read it, but there's another director on it already. I said, that's okay, this looks interesting. And, you know, Jaws, I thought it was a story about dental work. I didn't know. You know, it was about the ocean and the shark. So I took it to my house, and I read it over the weekend, and I flipped out for it. I just went nuts, especially the last 150 pages, which was the hunt, the sea hunt for this great white leviathan, you know. And it reminded me of Duel, because Duel is about this kind of unknown force chasing this innocent bystander. So I really was relating to that material, and it was a part of my life, and that story was still fresh in my mind. And I said to Dick and David, if anything ever falls out with this director that you've hired, I'll do the picture. And one day they called me and they said, the director fell out, it's yours.
He'd done the television movie Duel, and then he did Sugarland Express. And certainly we knew that this young man could direct. But Jaws was a huge, huge undertaking, and very expensive for that day. And I was impressed that he was cool enough under pressure to take the time that he needed to make sure the actors were believable and interesting in the movie. And that certainly paid off.
Give me your hands. Dogfish. You got a $5,000 net. You got $2,000 worth of fishing, and along comes Mr. Whitey. By the time he's finished with that net, it looks like a kiddie scissor class has cut it up for a paper doll. You got city hands, Mr. Hooper. You've been counting money all your life.
All right. Hey, I don't need this. I don't need this working class hero crap.
You're not going to do this aboard the ship, are you, Mr. Quinn?
Maybe I should go alone.
No, it's my party. It's my charter.
Yeah, sure, Charlie, sure, but it's my vessel. You're on board my vessel, mate, master, pilot, and I'm captain. Take him for ballast, Chief.
You got him.
There were many days, you know, where I just spent many days sitting on the shark barge waiting for the effects to be ready for me to go to work and direct the picture. And, you know, wondering, was this film going to end my career? Was I going to have to end my career on the water, which I didn't like anyway? And, you know, would I ever work again? I mean, those thoughts came to mind all the time. That we were just at the mercy of the forces of nature and the forces of technology, which is what that shark was. He was a technological marvel, but it also didn't work that well.
And my memories of him sitting on the camera boat, watching and waiting for that thing to work, I know it was very exasperating for him and for the studio. But in a way, I think we were blessed.
And forced me into a lot of compromising positions, but they were all good compromises because the film was actually scarier, I've often said, because the shark didn't work that well. And with the absence of the shark, I had just the ocean and the kind of power of suggestion to allow the audience to imagine where you weren't actually seeing the shark. And I think that really amped up the suspense of that picture tenfold.
When I'm in the boat alone and the boat is sinking, and I'm left there with the shark and my rifle and the boat is going down, it was a balsa wood boat. Well, I'm getting inside the boat and the stuntman is handing me an axe, a hammer, and a chisel, and the rifle, and I said, what is all this for? He says, well, you know, we've never sunk this boat before, and if the windows and the doors don't open, this is so you can fight your way out. I said, oh, okay. So as soon as that boat started to go down, I moved very quickly to get the hell out of there.
Smile, you son of a...
You know, I had lost my objectivity. I had no idea what we had made. And it was only after I previewed it the first time in Dallas, Texas, that I saw that that audience, who had never been on my production, had never had to fight the weather, had never had to deal with the growing pains of getting that movie made, they just came to it kind of blindsided with a little help from the book, which was a huge bestseller by that time, and they just ate the movie up. And that was the first time I realized that we might have something here.
Once again, Spielberg teamed up with actor Richard Dreyfuss for the 1977 blockbuster, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Hard as it may be to comprehend, no one would initially listen to Stephen's idea for Close Encounters until Jaws became an unqualified worldwide hit.
Damn it, I know this. I know what this is. This means something. This is important.
Well, I had been trying to make Close Encounters of the Third Kind even before Jaws, and nobody would give me a meeting. They wouldn't read my treatment. They wouldn't hear my ideas about a UFO project until Jaws was this big hit. And then suddenly I discovered what a hit can do for a filmmaker, as it can for a writer or a producer or an actor or an actress. And I fortunately had something I was passionate about making after Jaws, and it was very easy getting the money from Columbia once Jaws, you know, got our foot in the door. And Firelight was the inspiration for Close Encounters, as was just my keen interest on the whole subject of outer space and, you know, the chance that there's life off this planet, and the chance that there might have been life from out there coming here at some time or another. And so I was very keenly interested in those subjects. And I had a lot to say about, with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but I was very careful not to say it so loud that the message would drown out the fact that this was also supposed to be an entertainment. It was the movie I always wanted to make, was the movie that came out with the special edition, because I didn't have time to finish Close Encounters. The effects took a long time. I was unhappy with my first cut. I talked Columbia into letting me, you know, write and direct 5 sequences, not just inserts, as we often do when we finish a movie. We fix things with inserts and a line of dialogue here or there. I shot 5 huge scenes, including the discovery of Flight 19, those TBM Avenger fighter bombers at the beginning of the movie in the California desert. I mean, that was all added after I saw my first cut and didn't like the way the film originally opened with air traffic control. And now I've got, I think, the best balance on the laser, and someday on the DVD, which is the best balance between the original film and the special edition. I've cut out the ending. You no longer see the inside of the ship, and it's kind of a hybrid of both pictures.
Writer-director Robert Zemeckis and writer Bob Gale wrote Spielberg's next film, the 1979 release of 1941, starring John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. Unfortunately, 1941 did not enjoy either the critical or box office success of Jaws or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But along came George Lucas with an idea for a film titled Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was released in 1981. The film would capture the imagination of audiences worldwide. Spielberg was quoted as saying, "I made it as a B movie. I didn't see the film as anything more than a better-made version of the Republic Pictures serials." Lucas and Spielberg followed up the initial Raiders film with 2 successful sequels, Indiana Jones and The Temple of Doom in 1984.
You know how to fly, don't you?
No. Do you?
And Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade in 1989. Both films went on to overwhelming box office success, and there is continuing talk between Lucas and Spielberg for yet another one.
Junior?
Yes, sir.
It is you, Junior. Don't call me that, please.
The trilogy of Indiana Jones films began with a casual walk on a beach in Hawaii.
Well, I was vacationing with George in Hawaii the week that Star Wars opened in 1977, in May. And George just simply asked me what I was going to do next, and I said, I'm trying to get a meeting with Cubby Broccoli. I'm trying to get him to let me do a James Bond picture, which I'd always wanted to direct Bond. And George said, don't waste your time. I have a better idea. It's called Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he told me this very complicated story about this archaeologist and his search for antiquities, and always kind of supernatural antiquities. And George didn't have much more except that concept and a couple of paintings that this guy named John Steranko, this artist, had done of Indiana Jones with the leather jacket and the fedora hat and all that, and the whip. And that was about it, but I just flipped out for the idea, and we shook hands, made a deal on the beaches of Hawaii to do 3 pictures if the first one succeeded, and we began.
Knows, it seems to me, the whole history of film, and there's hardly a movie you can mention where he doesn't have some understanding of it or some knowledge of it. And sometimes that can be very interesting. I remember one time we were doing a scene in the second Indiana Jones involving elephants, and we rehearsed it once or twice, and then Stephen said, okay, let's take those the pointy sticks away from the mahouts. And all the mahouts said, no, we can't control the elephants without the pointy sticks. And Stephen said, no, come on, don't tell me that. I've never seen the pointy sticks. Remember Jungle Book? They didn't have the pointy sticks in Jungle Book. So Stephen's idea of elephants had come from Jungle Book.
In 1982, Spielberg captured the hearts and minds of moviegoers with the release of E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Primarily populated by a group of kids, the film was pure fantasy entertainment that appealed to people of all ages. The movie reflected Spielberg's interest in outer space, but instead of a standard UFO fantasy adventure, he fashioned a film that told a heartwarming story of an endearing alien, primarily through the eyes of children. E.T. became the Wizard of Oz of its time and remains timeless in its storytelling techniques that that allows enthusiastic audiences to watch and enjoy the film time and time again.
Oh, no. And they'll come.
My inspiration for E.T. was my interest in, in outer space and UFOs, and the divorce of my mom and dad, which I think is what E.T. essentially is about. When I was shooting the scene Close Encounters, I had actually, shooting the last scene, I had thought about E.T. and thought about what it would be like to tell a story about a single alien who comes into the life of a young boy whose father has left his mother, and somewhat this special friend fills that void. I feel like I am a kid, so I think I relate to kids really well. And I talk to kids like I would talk to you. I've talked to friends of mine. I don't talk to kids like they're kids. I think the whole idea of giving kids their equal due and giving them a lot of respect for being people, not don't be prejudiced because they're children. And I think that, and also allowing them to have a say in the characters they're playing, allowing them to mix their own language in with the language of the writer. So many of the wonderful lines from E.T., albeit written by Melissa Matheson and wonderfully written by her, other lines came from Drew Barrymore and Henry Thomas and Robert McNaughton, just from that zeitgeist the kids bring to a film.
Look what I made.